The Clockmaker's Secret. In the quiet town of Willowshade, nestled deep within a misty valley, stood an old clockmaker's shop. The shop, known as Timeless Wonders, was filled with intricately designed clocks of all shapes and sizes. Its owner, Mr. Aldric, was a reclusive man with a reputation for brilliance and mystery. No one knew much about him, except that he had lived in the town for decades, without seeming to age a day. One crisp autumn morning, a curious girl named Clara visited the shop. She loved mysteries and had always been fascinated by Mr. Aldric's creations. As she wandered through the shop, her eyes fell on an unusual clock tucked away in the corner. It was small and golden, with strange runes engraved around its face and no visible hands to mark the time. "Ah, you found the Tempus Mechanica," Mr. Aldric said, appearing from the shadows. His voice was deep and kind, but his eyes glimmered with something Clara couldn't quite place. "What does it do?" Clara asked. "It doesn't tell time, it reveals it," he replied cryptically. Before she could ask more, he placed the clock in her hands. "Take it, child. Perhaps you'll solve its mystery." Confused but intrigued, Clara took the clock home. That night, as the town's clock tower struck midnight, the golden clock began to hum softly. The runes glowed faintly, and suddenly, Clara was no longer in her room. She found herself in Willowshade, but not as she knew it. The streets were bustling with people in old-fashioned clothing, and gas lamps lit the cobblestone roads. Clara realized she had somehow traveled back in time. As she wandered the unfamiliar yet familiar streets, she overheard whispers of a robbery that had shaken the town years ago. The Tempus Mechanica seemed to have brought her to the very night the robbery occurred. The culprit had never been caught, and the stolen item, a priceless jewel called the Heart of Time, had vanished without a trace. Determined to uncover the truth, Clara followed the murmurs of the townsfolk to the old town hall. There, she saw a shadowy figure sneaking out of the building with a small, glowing object in hand. The thief moved quickly, disappearing into the woods beyond the town. Clara hesitated, but the clock in her hands began to glow brighter, urging her forward. She followed the figure into the forest, her heart pounding. The woods were eerily quiet, and the moonlight barely pierced through the thick canopy of trees. Finally, she came upon a clearing where the thief was kneeling beside a tree, digging a hole. Clara watched as they buried the jewel and covered it with dirt. Before she could get a closer look, the thief turned and began to walk back toward the town. Clara hid behind a tree, but as the figure passed, she caught a glimpse of their face, and gasped. It was a younger Mr. Aldric. The realization shocked her. Why would the clockmaker, known for his kindness and wisdom, have stolen the Heart of Time? The clock in her hands hummed again, and before she could process what she had seen, she was pulled back into the present. The next morning, Clara returned to the shop. Mr. Aldric was waiting for her, his expression calm but serious. "You've used the clock, haven't you?" he asked. Clara nodded. "I know what happened that night. But why did you steal the jewel?" Mr. Aldric sighed and gestured for her to sit. "The Heart of Time is no ordinary jewel," he explained. "It's a fragment of time itself, capable of disrupting the natural order. Decades ago, I was a young man tempted by its power. But once I realized the danger it posed, I buried it where no one would find it. Since then, I've used the Tempus Mechanica to guard the town and ensure the jewel remains hidden." Clara frowned. "But why give me the clock?" "Because I'm growing tired, Clara," he said softly. "I need someone I can trust to take my place. Someone curious, brave, and wise enough to handle its power." Clara was stunned. "You want me to guard the jewel?" Mr. Aldric nodded. "The clock chose you, Clara. You're the only one who can continue what I started." Though hesitant, Clara agreed. Over time, she learned to use the Tempus Mechanica, traveling through time, to protect Willowshade and its secrets. And though the townsfolk never knew of her adventures, Clara became the unseen guardian of their quiet little town, carrying on the legacy of the Clockmaker's secret. The end.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed, make sure to like our video and subscribe to Just Listeners for more amazing audio content. Stay tuned for more captivating tales and melodies.